Our next guest hasn't had an easy road since leaving the Celtics for the rival Heat, and his new book chronicles it all. He's the author of From the Outside, My Journey Through Life in the Game I Love, a two-time NBA champion, future Hall of Famer. We welcome Ray Allen to the desk. So good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Even though you're a fellow Husky, I have to get out of the way for this one because he's all sorts of fired up to have you.
I'm not. No, come on now. I'm just gonna ask what I need to ask you, and I go back too long for that. Let's get right to it. You see the book From the Outside. How much does that title have to do with your relationship with your former teammates in Boston?
I would say probably 20%. You know, the one thing that I talk about in the book is I come from a military background, so I've lived, all over the world. So as I've traveled, the different places I've lived, I've always had to find a way to learn to meet the new kids that were in the neighborhood, make friends with the kids down the street. And one thing that was consistent was basketball. So, and then you take the fact that I'm a three-point shooter, it played great against each other. So it had, just a small part, but, it works well for the book.
What is the relationship with you and these players, particularly Rajon Rondo right now?
Well, I haven't talked to him.
Why not?
When I left, and assuming, just like any free agent anywhere in America in any sport, you have the opportunity to move on and go to greener pastures, whatever it may be. But when I left, it was clear that the team wasn't doing what they needed to do to bring me, into the next year or so with their fold. So, writing was on the wall. I signed a new contract.
Let me interrupt. They did offer you more money than the Miami Heat now. And you still decided to go to South Beach to join LeBron James, D. Wade, and the crew.
Because
Boston offered you more money.
Because before you say the Miami Heat, it was about my negotiations with the Boston Celtics, which we started throughout that year. We wanted a contract throughout that whole year, and we wanted to make sure the three of us retired together. So based on where I was as a player at that time, what my salary was, we knew I was going to take a pay cut. So by the time the year came, they had signed everybody else contractually. And then when it came time to me, it was like, this is all we have left for you. But I knew what everybody in my position was making. So based on what I was asking for and what they were willing to pay me, it was like, we can't pay you that. We're not going to pay you that, even though they could have if they wanted to. So now we realize, hey, the relationship seemed like it's over. We had the LA Clippers, we had the Miami Heat, Memphis Grizzlies, and the Timberwolves on the table left for me potentially free agent-wise. So as we knew that the Boston relationship was over with, we had to figure out between these four teams where I was going to go. In that same day, the next day, Jamal Crawford, they actually thought that I was going to use them as leverage, the LA Clippers. So I had to speak with Vinny Del Negro and say, listen, this is real. Like, we have to figure out where we're going to go and what's the next chapter for me. They then signed Jamal Crawford. So then what was left was Miami, Memphis, and Minnesota.
Right.
So I had to choose between those three teams, knowing that my tenure was over with in Boston.
Max, I'm coming to you in a couple of seconds. Let me just ask Ray this. That's business.
Yeah.
And we get that. Like Isaiah Thomas, if he had a problem with Danny Ainge, because that arguably could have cost him money, et cetera, et cetera. We get that. We don't know KG that well, but we know KG well enough to know how real he is.
Yeah.
Paul Pierce, class personified. Kendrick Perkins, real dude. Rondo, for better or worse, seems to be a relatively honest guy. Those are the kind of guys that will look at a business decision like that and not personalize it. But it seems to be that there has been some personal animus that has existed since your departure. And if it were just about what you said, those are not the kind of guys that would have a problem with you for making that decision. It seems to be something else that comes along with it.
At what point do you vouch for my character?
I'm asking.
You look at me and you say all these things that I didn't do and this is who I was. Like, I've been good to the media my whole career.
Sure.
I've done everything that people have asked of me.
Yes, you have.
When it comes down to that scenario, just like anybody in sports knows, you have a deadline. July 1, when teams come up and they say, hey, we want to bring you in, and then you got July 2nd, 3rd, where you can start signing contracts, the chips are falling, the dominoes are falling.
I'm not questioning any of that.
But what I'm trying to tell you is it gets to a point where, the situation happened with James Posey, in 2008, after we won the championship, he signs with New Orleans. And it just happened just like that.
Right.
He was like, hey, I had this contract. We were at the ESPYs. He was like, I have this contract. I had to sign it,
Right.
or else they were going to move in another direction.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, Ray, is that everybody knows that you've always been class. Everybody knows that you've always been good people. So it was shocking to us, for example, when Boston played Miami and Doc Rivers was cordial and Paul Pierce was cordial, but Rondo or KG didn't even want to shake your hand or whatever. What I'm saying is it seemed to be an animus that was aimed in your direction from what you describe as a pure business decision. It didn't seem that way for those guys. How do you explain it?
Well, that's what I'm trying to tell you. The minute I leave, you know, again, we had our issues. You know, there's no question about that. But every team has their issues. We argue, we fight, we fuss. You know, this person thinks he could do it this way. It's just part of sports, but it's not personal. I didn't take anything personal. You know, yeah, Rondo and I had a blow up in the locker room, but he had a blow up with Doc. He had a blow up with KG. It wasn't personal. It's just part of who we are and what we do.
Right.
I didn't take it personal. I sat there and tried to figure out what we need to do because we had to get to the playoffs and hopefully try to win another championship. Once 2011 came, or 2012, or 11, when we're going into the free agency, it was like you take all these things and you mash them up. And it was like, I knew my future was over because this relationship that I had with Rondo, I don't have any issues going forward. It just didn't seem like it would be fixed.